live. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Looks like currently it's just the 5 of us, but if you guys want to quickly introduce yourselves for people who may be watching this later that don't know any of us, we'll start with Evie and go around.
I'm Evie. My channel is She Was Only Evie. I'm very inconsistent with my posting, but I read a little bit of everything. Obviously, classics like Jane Austen, fantasy, sci-fi, whatever. Paper, cereal boxes. Just
And you do like movie stuff too.
Yeah. Mostly involving alcohol. Stephanie. So yes.
Christy?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry.
Right.
I was getting the stream on my phone so I can comment. I'm Christy Lewis from Dostoevsky in Space, and I really love reading with these ladies. Pretty much anything that they want to read, I'm down for, but I really love classics and fantasy and children's books. Hi, Dia! And I'm getting into nonfiction, so a little of everything.
My name is oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Stephanie.
No,
I thought we were going like clockwise.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
Okay. Oh, my name is Tiffany, and my channel name is Beautiful Minutia. And I would say that I'm a big classics reader, but I do read a little bit of everything else, middle grade fantasy and sci-fi. Yeah, a little bit of everything, but predominantly classics is definitely my jam.
I'm Stephanie. My channel is Miss Richards Reads. I also kind of read a little bit of everything, mainly classics, fantasy and sci-fi, and a ton of cozy mysteries. And I'm excited for this. I think it'll be fun.
By the way, in case anyone didn't get the memo, make sure to grab your glasses because...
Oh my gosh!
That's funny. And they're all different kinds of glasses, too.
They are.
Yes.
The variety, the plethora of
We're a diverse
glasses.
bunch of glasses wearers.
Hi, Matt.
Okay, so first we'll start with spoiler-free discussion and just kind of chat about our general thoughts about Emma without going into too many spoilers. This is my, I think, 4th or 5th reread of Emma. This was the first Jane Austen novel that I read when I started reading Jane Austen, and this was back in like high school, and I completely fell in love with it. And that pushed me to read some of her other works. And it's been one of my favorite Jane Austen novels ever since then.
Sorry, coffee burps. So this is my first reread of Emma. I first read Emma in college as part of my major authors Jane Austen course. One of the few classes in college that I actually paid attention to and did the work for. And when I first read Emma, I did not like it. I mean, it's Jane Austen, so like not liking a Jane Austen book is still, that book is still leagues above everything else. It's still fantastic. But it was always my least favorite Jane Austen novel. And I didn't like Emma as a character. I'm like, she's annoying and she's a spoiled rich girl. And then I watched the Autumn de Wilde film adaptation that was released a couple of years ago. And I'm like, dang, this is actually really funny. And it made me appreciate Emma as a character a lot more. And I was hoping if I reread it, the novel as well. Because I just really liked Autumn de Wilde's adaptation. As opposed to the Persuasion adaptation that was done most recently. That was terrible. But yeah, so and then I reread Emma and with these lovely ladies, and I Austen's wit is totally dialed up to 10,000%. I was laughing every other page, and it is so funny, so witty, but also so much heart to it, and I very much appreciated it more on this reread. So
Yeah, Emily, we'll talk more in depth about Emma's character and the different nuances of it when we get into spoilers. I feel like that's easier to talk about when we're talking about spoilers and we can talk details, but we'll get to that in just a couple minutes.
Are we going in the same order, or are we just free for all now?
Free for all. There's no rules here.
Chaos. This is also, I think, my third or fourth reread of Emma, and I kind of appreciate it more every time I read it. The first time I really liked her, but she is frustrating at times. But I just think she's fun to follow, and this is probably maybe mid out of all her books, so right in the middle. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I had a really good time rereading it. And I need to watch the new adaptation now that I've just reread it, because I'm not.
another movie night with wine and whiskey is in our future.
But I'm not the biggest fan of Clueless, which I know is sacrilege. I know. And I hate the Gwyneth Paltrow version, so I have very high hopes for the new one.
To quote Cher, as F.
Well, I think that this is my third reread because I read it once in high school and then I read it once in college and hadn't read it since. So I'm kind of in the process of rereading all of Jane Austen's major novels, and the only one I have left is Mansfield Park. So I'm getting there. And I will say that I do agree that I think that this is one of Jane Austen's more witty novels, and I laughed so much during this book. But I don't think that it's one of my favorites, only because I can't relate to Emma as a protagonist all that much. Like, personality-wise, she's so different than me. And she is frustrating at times, although I do like her character growth. I can appreciate that. But it's funny because Christy and I were talking about Jane Austen books, I don't remember, like a week or two ago. And like each of our favorite like Jane Austen novels are because like we relate the most to that protagonist. So I think that that's why Emma ranks like a little bit lower for me. But like Evie was saying, like a lower ranking Jane Austen is still like heads and shoulders over so many other books. So it's not like this was still like of easily like a 4.5 star read. I still loved it, but it's just not quite as high for me.
I feel, kind of similarly to Tiffany. I really like to have somebody that I can relate to follow along in a story, even if it's like just one of many characters. It just makes it easier for me. But following Emma so closely it's tough because she's a very active protagonist. She's always like moving around and trying to move people around, like where she thinks they need to go. So that for me was very stressful. Everything that happened with Harriet was very stressful. But I'm really glad that we chose it to reread, because on my own, I read it the first time, and then the second time I tried to reread it, I just DNF'd it, and because I was like too stressed. But because of this group, I went ahead and finished it this time, and I ended up enjoying it like quite a bit more. And Emma does really grow as a character, so yeah, I ended up enjoying it by the end.
I think for me, I related to Emma the first time I read it because I was always the person that was trying to make everyone else happy. And whenever I read something it's not that I relate to the character as a whole, but I find like one little nuance of the character that I can latch onto. And for me in high school, it was Emma trying to, Emma was trying to match all of her friends together. She was the city matchmaker, if you will. And to me, that part, trying to make everyone happy and trying to just keep her neighborhood happy as much as she could was what I could relate to and what kept me coming back to the novel. But as I reread it, as I get older, I find myself gravitating more towards characters like Mr. Knightley instead of like Emma, which is pretty consistent. A lot of times I will find myself attaching more to the side characters than the main character in books. And so looking back on it, I was like, yeah, it makes sense that I now gravitate towards someone like Mr. Knightley, who is not afraid to say how it is, no matter who he's talking to. He's just there, he's kind of part of that comic relief in a sense. But he also, deeply cares about the people in his life enough to be able to have those kinds of conversations with them.
Yeah. I also really think the characters in this book are really dynamic. Like they very much have distinct personalities, which I think is part of the fun for me.
Yeah.
That is so true.
So speaking of characters, let's switch gears a little and talk about some of our kind of big characters in this book. And now feel free to talk spoilers, talk details if you want. If anyone's out there and they haven't read Emma yet and they don't want to be spoiled about anything that happens in this book, thank you guys for joining us.
I was going to say it's a 200-year-old book.
And come back. People don't read classics. A lot of people don't read classics anymore unless someone pushes them to do it. So, yeah, I know Evie wanted to talk about the relationship between Emma and Mr. Knightley. I don't know where you guys want to start, but feel free to jump in and start wherever you want.
Max is here, by the way. He already tried.
I saw him. So cute.
I swear, if he starts barking, I'm going to lose it.
He wants to be famous.
I mean, he's the only reason why I'm on the YouTubes. Anyways, yeah. So Mr. Knightley and Emma. So I love Mr. Knightley. I think he's probably next to Frederick Wentworth. He's my favorite love interest of all of Austen's love interests. However, the one thing that I was just like, ooh, oh, that's a little awkward, is when he confesses to Emma that he has loved her since she was 13.
Oh. Yep.
And he's, what, 16 years older than she is?
Yeah.
Only slightly less awkward than Colonel Brandon going after 16-year-olds. So, multiple times. So,
I think for me, because I've read it so many times, that detail has been lost in my readings. Because to me, it didn't even faze me. The way that they communicated together as characters and, friends and then partners, to me, it felt like, if it wasn't for that little detail that he put in there, I wouldn't have, in my head, they were around the same age, maybe not exactly the same age, but that when Evie said that in our private chat on Voxer, I was like, what? He can't be, what do you mean age gap? I had to go back and look it up because I'm like, there was like maybe like a couple years apart. But it's also, you look at the time that Jane Austen was writing and the relationships in a lot of the literature of that day, and you know, for us now in 2022, that's cringeworthy, but back then, that was normal to a lot of people.
I guess
Yeah,
it feels worse because he knew her as a child. I think that's why it feels weirder.
Yeah.
Because he's like, ever since you turned 12 or 13 or whatever. I was just like, like, I think that if they had met as adults, then it doesn't feel awkward at all. But I think you're right, Kate, that it's very much like a cultural difference that was a societal norm back then. But now, not so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, but aside from that, I really, you know, the whole friends to lovers type trope, I loved that aspect of it, and they're very much, you know, equals in that, you know, Mr. Knightley's gonna call Emma out on her crap, and Emma's gonna tease him, which the first time I literally laughed out loud was when Emma was teasing Knightley, and I don't have my book with me, but it's in the midst of in front of Mr. Woodhouse, and Mr. Woodhouse goes, "Oh well, that's true. I am very troublesome," and she's like, "Oh no, Papa, I didn't mean you." And I'm like, "Oh God, that's hysterical."
Yes, I love their relationship dynamic. It's very entertaining. And I feel like out of all of them, that's probably the one that I would relate to the most because they can make fun of each other and call each other out on their stuff and still like each other.
I felt like they were like in the world of Highbury, they were like the perfect couple. Like they will be able to balance each other in a way that none of the other couples that we saw would be able to. Feels like no one else in that world would have been able to equal Emma and give her everything that she needed, even stuff that she didn't know that she needed until she had it. And no one else except for Knightley was willing to have those kinds of conversations with her when he said, "Look, you were awful to your friend who you've known forever. This is not what friendship is. If this is what you are now, then we can't be friends." No one else was willing to call her out on that. Everyone went along with it because that's what Emma did. And that's, you know, what Frank Churchill was doing.
Well, but oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think it's also like, as much as, you know, Emma is about like Emma growing as a character and like matchmaking and how she treats people, I think it's also about like societal structure and hierarchy. Like pretty much the only reason Knightley can call Emma out is because they're at the same like societal level. Like if Harriet had done that, then that's or even oh God, what's her name? Miss Bates. Even if Miss Bates had tried to call her out, which you can kind of read between the lines and see if she's. I took it as she being kind of passive aggressive in a way, but still like trying to ingratiate herself and be like, "Oh, Emma's so kind and whatever." She wouldn't be able to do that because she's a lower class, or at least lower in society. And alternatively, Emma trying to bring Harriet up, like that's why all the chaos happened, because she's trying to bring her up in society when really she shouldn't be. Or
because wasn't Mr. Martin actually considered marrying up for Harriet? Like that was above her class at the time, wasn't it?
Emma thought so, but because Mr. Martin was actually marrying still below, because he's a farmer and Harriet just has no. Wait.
No, I was just thinking Harriet was. I was thinking Harriet was below Mr. Martin.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So as it was that she was already marrying up by getting a proposal from Mr. Martin, but that still wasn't good enough for Emma.
Oh, I thought you meant Martin was marrying up, and I'm like, wait,
no,
what?
No. Sorry. Sorry, I was confusing.
Yeah.
But you know, her turning out to be the daughter of a trader, that gave her some kind of semblance of societal power. I think.
Evie, that is such a good point. The hierarchy is almost like the enemy in almost every single relationship in this book. Do you think that was purposeful on Austen's part?
Well, I mean, I feel like, sorry to kind of like, I feel like I'm taking over this thing. I'm so sorry. I feel like, you know, she's writing in her time, and that's probably a really important thing in her society and in her time frame. Max just farted and scared himself. Oh God!
It happens to the best of us.
Mom, don't put that on the internet.
We're live.
Anyways, sorry. So, like, I think she's writing what she knows in her society and what's important in her society. Just like novels nowadays are gonna reflect society as they are now. You know. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So she may have been aware of it, but probably couldn't imagine a world where there wasn't some kind of hierarchy like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lucy.
She's a little cranky today.
Yeah, I mean, hierarchy in society, to some extent, I feel like does play a major role in all of Austen's novels, because that's, you know, that's what she was surrounded by. Back then, they didn't have all of these different fantasy books and fantasy worlds and TV and movies, and, you know, they had plays, but that was, you know, to the extent of, you know, you had to rely on your own imagination. So, you know, most writers relied on what they had in their own world and built that into their fictional world. And that's why you see, especially in Jane Austen's time, a lot of novels surrounding societal hierarchy and social classes and whatnot.
Well, also that's the way that, you know, women, both in Austen's novels and in like Regency England, like that's the only way that they would move up or down in society, is like in the case of, spoiler alert for Mansfield Park, if you married below your station or for love, and you didn't have enough money, if you didn't marry into money, you're going to have a situation where you're going to basically be living in squalor comparatively. Or if you happen to marry a rich guy like Mr. Darcy, you're going to be like, holy crap. Oh, Jane Fairfax. I was like, Jane Austen? What are you talking about? Never mind. Jane Fairfax. But yeah, so I'm going to shut up so other people can talk.
I also felt sorry for Jane. I didn't dislike her. Mrs. Bates, she reminded me, I think I said it in the chat, of that like friend or coworker or a friend of a friend that has to show you like a zillion photos of their kids and won't stop talking about them. And at some point it's like, I get it, but I don't care anymore. And she's just like, oh my gosh, please stop. So I felt sorry for her.
I felt sorry for her more in the middle of the book, and at the starting in the middle, when, you know, Mrs. Elton was trying to force on these different opportunities and prospects to her, and Jan was like, no, like, I can't tell you what I've got coming, but I have something else in line. And then she still like kept forcing it on her, even though she said no. At the beginning, it was just like almost like Marcia and the Brady Bunch. Oh my gosh, here goes Jane again. Jane. Everything was about Jane Fairfax. And But then as you got to know her character outside of the gossip, the societal gossip, then you realize she's just like any other Jane Austen character, and there's much more to her than what the gossip shows.
And it wasn't her fault that her aunt was obsessed with her. I was like so proud of her that she's going to talk to everyone. Like, that wasn't Jane's fault.
Right.
I think we all have somebody in our lives that's
Mhm.
that person.
Yeah. Yes, dear. I wanted to slap Mrs. Elton so much. I'm like, who do you think you are?
I was reading a little bit too close to that comment. I was like, who likes Mrs. Elton? And then I saw the knot, and I'm like, okay, thank God.
It's the second cup of coffee, Evie.
Yeah, it's
Harriet, I kind of felt sorry for her,
Mhm.
just because she's so naive and clueless
gullible
and
and
easily
Yeah.
influenced.
Yeah.
And she genuinely seems like a sweet person.
yeah.
You know, again, it was just like she was naive and just like kind of just bought into everything that Emma was trying to do because she didn't really know any better. She was really young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, again, kind of going back to that hierarchical social hierarchy thing, like, oh, if Emma has this power and is at this higher level, she must know, like,
Yeah.
this has got to be right. Like when she's going through, when she tells Emma that Robert Martin has proposed, she's like, what do I do? What do I do? And she's relying on Emma to give her answer for her. And it's like, oh, come on, poor Harriet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that scene cracked me up so much because at the end, Emma's like, well, I'm glad I didn't tell her what to do. But now that you know what to do and I didn't tell you, this is how you should respond to the letter. Like, I was just like, wow, okay.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I feel like even though he absolutely, spoiled Emma to no end, I loved Mr. Woodhouse. He's like one of those characters that he's perfect, just sprinkled throughout the novel because he absolutely steals the scene.
Yep.
Every time he's in it, no matter what he's saying, whether it's something good or something bad, he just like, at least for me, he steals this every scene that he's in, and I'm like reading. There's like parts where I'm like reading through just to get to more parts with Mr. Woodhouse in it.
Yes.
Like
I'm so afraid of everything.
I never realized how old he actually was. Until I get to the scene, I can't remember who it was that said it, but they were like, basically, we don't want your father to get like sick and like die or whatever from a
He
cold.
was so
And it's like,
concerned about
oh,
his grass.
he actually really is super old, so he could actually die from a cold.
Yeah.
But then the very end, like he finally agrees to Emma and Knightley marrying and him coming to live at oh god, not Highbury. What's their house called again? Crap.
Oh,
Mr.
Knight. Yeah, I don't remember.
Why can't I remember? I remember Mr. Knightley's is Donwell Abbey, but I can't remember their house's name.
Hartfield.
Yes.
There you go. I was like, it starts with an H, but it's not Highbury. But yeah, I thought it was so hysterical that the reason that he agreed to let Emma and Knightley marry and give his consent is because people started getting their chickens like stolen or whatever. And he was worried about someone like breaking in. And he's like, oh, well, Knightley would be here to protect the house and protect us. And I'm like, oh, my God. I literally was laughing so hard.
Can you imagine him as a father-in-law?
Oh, God. And so I think that's another reason why I love Knightley so much is that, like, he doesn't look down upon anyone. He treats everyone with respect. while still acknowledging, like, yes, I am, of a higher social class than Mr. Martin or Harriet or whatever, but he still treats them with respect.
Yeah.
And the same way with, like, Mr. Woodhouse, like, he knows he's older and a little bit senile and whatever, but he's willing to, quote unquote, lower himself to move to his father-in-law's house and put himself in a lower station to not only marry Emma, but also, like, because he cares for Mr. Woodhouse. Otherwise, why would he be there every day, basically? So
yeah, I felt like Mr. Knightley, to me, felt like the most genuine character out of all the characters in the novel.
Yeah.
You knew, like, what he was saying was exactly what he was feeling, whether it was good or bad. He didn't hide anything, and it felt like he truly cared for each one of the people in Highbury.
Yeah.
I think he's a more patient son-in-law than his brother is, too. Every time John was there, John would be doing okay, and then something would happen, and he'd just be like, no. And also, actually, I could relate to John a lot, where he's like, can we just stay home and just read by the fire? And I was like, yes, John Knightley, yes.
It's really interesting, kind of the way that in this book Austen's characters handled. Yes, I've got my Stephanie blanket. It's very interesting how Austen's characters handle the issue of, like, honesty versus, like, very politely not saying a word, because, like, with Mr. Knightley, he had a very developed understanding of when to be honest with Emma, basically. He was completely honest with Emma. Whereas with other people, for the most part, it seemed like he had a lot of tact, depending on, like, their social station or his relationship to them.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, his brother, like Tiffany was saying, was more, he'll speak in the fire of the moment and not worry as much about tact.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I guess greeting. Good greeting.
I mean, also, John Knightley doesn't live in Highbury. He comes to visit, so he doesn't have to. Mr. Knightley considers, has to interact with these people almost on a daily basis. He lives around them. He sees them way more often than John Knightley does. He comes to visit, every once in a while, but he doesn't have to interact with them as much as Mr. Knightley does. So Mr. Knightley not only takes other people's feelings and personalities and stations into consideration, but also, I think the other side of it is thinking how this will reflect on him and how, future interactions will go. Whereas John Knightley's like, I don't need to worry about that because I'm not gonna see them for another couple months after this.
Yeah,
that's true.
I mean, yeah, it's all about perception, because even, like, Knightley points out when Frank Churchill goes to London to get his hair cut, like, it's like, really, you're gonna ride 8 miles, like 16 miles both ways to go get your freaking haircut on a Sunday? Like, who does that? It just looks poor. Oh, hello.
Idea.
Tell Poppy we said hi.
Yeah, going back to, like, the Knightley's kind of tact and openness, related to that, I don't recall I don't recall a Austen love interest being so open with their affection.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he literally calls Emma my love at the end, and I'm like, wait, I don't think that's in any other Austen novel. Like, they don't like address each other in any sort of, like, affectionate way like that. And I'm like, I like Knightley. Knightley's cool.
I also love that he had to ask Emma to call him by his first name. Like,
Yes.
you call me something other than Mr. Knightley when we're married because, you know, it was cute before, but when we're husband and wife, can we have something different?
Yeah.
I love how she's like, I won't
favorite
stoop. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I won't stoop to Mrs. Elton and call you Mr. K. I was like, oh god.
Freaking Mrs. Elton.
I know. Oh my word. And she just calls him Knightley. What?
The nerve.
The nerve, the audacity.
I think Elton was the funniest character to me.
Here's
He's
something
such
else.
a damn fool.
Yep.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
How
Like
Emma
Mr.
thought,
Collins level,
yes.
except he didn't mention potatoes.
Yes. Hi, Amanda.
What excellent boiled potatoes you have.
That's
And
a
what
really
was
good
it that Mr. Woodhouse was always trying to get people to eat?
Oh, was it
Asparagus?
gruel?
There's a lot of porridge, I think, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
no cake.
Oh yeah.
and it couldn't be lumpy porridge.
Right.
It needed to be smooth and perfect. That's Isabella complained about hers wasn't at home. He's like, you should just move here
Right. Move
with
back.
your children.
And nobody should ever eat cake ever.
Yeah.
I love him. He's such like a hypochondriac, basically. I love him so much.
Watch out for the drafts.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you're gonna have a dance, don't have it in a place where there's drafts.
Don't open the windows.
And also him like, oh, poor Miss, like even after she's married and has kids, he still calls her Miss Taylor.
Yeah.
Like lamenting like, how dare
laugh
oh, she's
every
in such a
time.
worse like situation because she's married and has
She
her own
must be
house.
so sad.
Meanwhile, she's like just right down the road,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
On the same property, basically. Like, oh my gosh.
But then, like, Emma also went along with it. Like, you know, she would call poor Miss Taylor, poor Miss Taylor.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't just Mr. Woodhouse. It was like that household.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it was like when like I don't want to say that she was like enabling her father, but like she was
Humoring him.
She's
yeah,
coddling
humoring
him.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I was amazed at her patience with her father.
Yeah. She knew how to handle him. Like, you know, in a way that like she could talk to him and bring him around to things that were actually like for his benefit. But she knew he wouldn't be okay with it right away. Just like when she went to the party and she's like, no, we can't say we're immediately going to go get these people. We have to like be like, well, maybe we could ask, and we have to make it a slow introduction to this topic or he won't have it.
You know, the thing, make it seem like it's their idea.
Pretty much. Pretty much. She's an expert at that. I think she's an expert about that with everything, actually. She did that with Harriet, too.
Well, I was gonna say, like, she's had the practice with her dad, so she's simultaneously like so confined with just her father and obviously Knightley that I feel like Emma has this idea in her head that like, oh, I can handle my dad, so I should be able to like not control everybody else, but like manage everybody else's lives. So that's why she feels like, oh, she successfully was matchmaker to Miss Taylor for however she thinks. So I can do it with Harriet. So yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, like, to Emma's credit, you know, we view it in 2022 as not a great thing to, you know, manage or manipulate people. But I think to at least some extent in Emma's mind, it's not a bad thing. She thinks, like, you know, this is my place in this society. This is what I'm doing. You know, everyone has their own little things that they do in the society for the society. I don't think it was a negative, like, she didn't look at it as necessarily manipulating people, but helping them.
Yeah, I don't think she was like manipulating people. Like her intentions were good. Like I don't think she was manipulating people to like show her power. She was thinking she was actually helping them.
Right.
So, however delusional that might be. So
That's a good point,
Yeah.
actually. Not going to London or the ocean. Yeah, that's as
very
opposed to everyone else.
But they went to Box Hill.
Yep. Good old Box Hill. What a good time that was. I think that was Christy's favorite part of the whole book.
Oh.
Speaking of stressful parts.
and I think the only, if I remember correctly, the only way that she could go there is by setting her father up to in the house with Mrs. Bates, the older lady, to make sure that he was settled. She couldn't just go there on her own. She had to basically keep him occupied.
That's like the most unselfish part of Emma is how she's a caretaker for her father.
Yeah, and that she's like, I won't marry Mr. Knightley until my father passes away, and then they find another solution, but she's like, she's fine just being engaged until that happens because she cares so much about him.
Yeah.
That's Emma. I know Emma the Bookish Princess loves Emma because I think mainly for that reason. She's very unselfish in that way, and so it kind of shows who she can become, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think that part of the reason that she is the way that she is and that she is trying to control things and trying to do things is because she was so spoiled by her father and was basically told, like, you can do no wrong, like, everything you do is great, you know? And so as a result of that, she's like, well, then this matchmaking is great. You know, so she didn't have that, like, she wasn't trying to be selfish in the way that she was doing it.
Yeah, and I think also, like, because she was so close to her father and she wouldn't marry even if, Mr. Right came along until, her father had passed, that I feel like in a way matchmaking her friends and everyone else in Highbury was her way of experiencing love. Until she, until Mr. Knightley came along and put it in her face and said, look, it's right here in front of your face. That was her way. She admitted that she wouldn't be able to experience that kind of love until she could, she didn't have to take care of her father anymore. So that was kind of, in a sense, her way of experiencing that love while she was still young.
Well, she also thought love would, like, with Frank Churchill, like, oh, I think I love Frank Churchill one day, and then the next day, actually, I don't. Never mind.
Yes, but I've also, as a young person, I've been there. There have been plenty of guys that I've dated that in the moment, at that time, it wasn't, one day, in the span of one day like it was for Emma, but I've had plenty of relationships where I thought in that moment I, loved the guy that I was dating.
Yeah.
And then, you find real love, true love, and you're like, oh, that was nothing compared to what I'm feeling now.
Yeah.
So
That was
I could relate to that. It's a little ridiculous because it was only one day, but, the thinking that you're in love and then realizing that you're not really in love or you're out of love, I could relate to because I've had plenty of those situations.
Yeah.
I think what she was experiencing was an alleviation of boredom.
I think you're right.
Yep.
I thought it was so funny when he first left and she's like, she felt like for that first day, she was like, oh, and she was like, kind of like, I don't want to say distraught. That's too strong of a word, but she was a little unsettled when he left. And then the next day she's fine. And she's like, everyone has to experience love once. So I'm glad that I did. And I'm like, no, I just thought it was funny.
Yes.
Oh, Emma.
Just wait, girl.
Goodness.
Can we I feel like we haven't really talked about Harriet, and just like her relationships with Mr. Elton, Frank Churchill, Mr. Knightley. Like, I know we talked about her like naivete and like gullibility and stuff like that, but like, like she falls in love with 3 guys, or at least I should say, Emma thinks she falls in love with 3 guys. And oh god.
Well, I guess it is 3 because Mr. Martin,
Oh, yeah,
and then
true,
Mr.
true, yeah.
Elton,
Yeah.
and then Mr. Knightley, and
Yeah.
then Mr. Martin again.
Yeah.
I think it's more that
Uh,
because of her place in society, you know, she was below Emma, and to her, Emma knew, you know, exactly what she should do. Emma knew exactly who she should be matched up with. And so if Emma says, you know, you're perfect for this person, whether it's 1 time or 5 times, she's not going to go against what Emma says. Even when she knows, because we know that she ends up in the end with Mr. Martin anyways, she knows she's not going to go against what Emma says, even if she knows that Mr. Martin really is the right person for her. Well, Emma says I shouldn't be with Mr. Martin, so she must be right. I must be seeing something wrong in this situation. I must be misreading this relationship.
yeah, what was it? I think it was Mr. Knightley that had said, like, because of the way that Emma treated Harriet and like handled her friendship with her, that Harriet started to think better of herself than what she was or whatever, just like from a societal point of view. But to kind of shift tangentially related, the thing that made me actually really, really sad was at the end when kind of everyone starts getting paired off and everything starts getting resolved, that because of their differences in society, like Emma no longer can be friends with Harriet. They just go their separate ways and are no longer friends because they can't be. And I'm like, oh, that makes me sad. So
Yeah.
Well, I think that was part of the reason that Emma didn't want Harriet to marry Mr. Martin, is because of that, you know.
And she had
But I
given
also feel
herself
like, even though we don't see it on the page because the novel ends, I feel like eventually, because Emma is so strong-willed, they'll come around again and they'll become friends again. Because she is now matched up with Mr. Knightley. If she was matched up with someone like Mr. Elton, she might, you know, go along with whatever society says. But I feel like there will be that extended time where they won't be friends. But I feel like eventually they'll come around full circle, and you know their friendship will be reignited again.
Yeah, I don't think it would ever be like the same way of like them be able to go over to, you know, Harriet going over to the house and having visits and stuff like that. But
I don't think farmers have much leisure time.
yeah, so
But Knightley and
Farmers,
Mr.
like-
Martin knew each other and were friends and talked, so that
Right.
means that there's
That's
still that
true.
contact there.
yeah.
That's true. I think men of the time who were like leisure men, basically, I think they probably had more ability and responsibility to go about the neighborhood and like see about the agriculture, or, you know, whatever interests them. They would try to learn about the neighborhood if they are like the responsible kind of gentleman. But I feel like women maybe less so. But that's sort of a guesstimate.
Yeah, I think it's kind of referenced with Miss Bates, I think, because she's kind of like not quite rich enough. Like she's rich enough to have one room with a maid at the top of the like ballroom area or whatever, but she's not so destitute enough to where she actually has to work.
Right.
She can just barely get by. I think working women, like Emma wouldn't be able to have a friendship with a working woman, a woman that works. So
Which is very sad.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's maybe I'm just more sympathetic towards Emma. But I feel like that's part of why she wanted to find someone for Harriet so desperately, because she knew if Harriet didn't marry, she would have to work for herself and she wouldn't have so much time with Harriet.
I think she knew without Harriet she would be, not only would she be very bored, but yeah, they wouldn't be able to really be friends. So
And she'd be lonely.
yeah, she'd be lonely. I think Emma is a very lonely person.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
keeps herself busy and tries to keep her spirits up, but her social circle is very small.
Mm-hmm. And
Well,
once Miss Taylor got married, that was like her closest friend gone.
Right. End of the world. Poor Miss Taylor.
Yeah.
Yes.
And poor Isabella.
Yeah, she doesn't seem like she's all that close with her sister.
Like, I completely forgot, until I reread this book, I completely forgot that she even had a sister.
Mm-hmm.
In my head, Emma, the way that Mr. Woodhouse treats Emma, in between my reads, my mind always thinks of Emma as an only child. And then I reread it, and I'm like, oh, she has a sister? What?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess for the time when you're married off, you're no longer part of your father's family. You are now your husband's family.
Right.
But going back to Harriet, I think it's interesting kind of comparing Harriet and Jane Fairfax, because Harriet was going to school. Mind you, I don't think she would have been like a governess or anything like that, at least to the level of Jane Fairfax. But, you know, Harriet was kind of going down that path if she hadn't have been married. And it's interesting how Emma winds up being able, the only way she's able to have a connection with Jane Fairfax at the end is when she marries Frank Churchill and is no longer going down that path of being a governess. So, yeah.
Yeah, and Jane had experienced, by living with the Campbells, she'd experienced the other side and now had to go to work, you know, which makes you feel that much more sorry for her and what she was going through.
And all because of Mrs. Elton.
Well, she was supposed to be a governess anyway, I guess, but
Yeah, but she had, you know, this long engagement to Frank Churchill that was a secret.
yeah.
And Mrs. Elton kept pushing her into this governess. And, you know, at first she was trying to be polite, but Mrs. Elton was just so pushy that she's like, listen, lady. And still, like, it's just...
I think Mrs. Elton and Emma are two sides of the same coin. Like, I see why Mr. Elton went for Mrs. Elton. One, he was probably desperate, and two, like, they're pretty much the same person, but, like, you know, they're both like controlling and want to like manage everybody else's lives and have more importance than necessary. And I think that's why Emma didn't like Mrs. Elton so much, because she probably subconsciously saw a lot of herself in Mrs. Elton. But I did like Emily's comment or reference that Martin was a tenant of Knightley, so it makes sense.
Oh, interesting.
I think he was.
Correct. Yeah.
But he still like valued and esteemed him, you know. He still said he was like a good man, and like he almost call him like that he was like almost like a gentleman farmer kind of a thing. Like that's how he saw him. Not that that was his status, but that's how he saw him.
Yeah. I got the impression, and maybe I just read too much into it though, that it was more than a business relationship between Martin and Knightley. That, you know, at least from Martin's point of view, Knightley was a confidant to him.
Yeah, he went to talk about Harriet and stuff.
About Harriet and everything going on, and Knightley gave him his honest opinion about things. It wasn't just, this is the guy I pay my rent to, and this is my tenant type of deal. It felt like they had a more friendship-based relationship than just the business side of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't go to my leasing agent and say, hey, I'm having this problem with my boyfriend. Can you help me out?
I mean, it was also Regency England. You never know. So
That's true. That's true. He could have been like, I like this girl, but I don't know if she's beneath my station because she's illegitimate. What do you think?
also he could see that as he probably knows that Knightley is close to Emma, and he could kind of, hey, Emma's friends with Harriet. Here's the segue. So
Yeah.
I happen to live in a pretty rural farming area, and everybody knows everybody. I imagine it probably wasn't too different there too.
Yeah.
We just went to the farmer's market and we knew everybody there today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
I was looking at some questions online about this book, and one of them was, how would this book be different if instead of being in Emma's head, this was written from third person? That would change so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'd probably change our perceptions of Emma because she would seem that much more of a jerk.
Yeah.
She would be like Mrs. Elton.
exactly.
She would. Because we don't see her motivation if it's written from a
But we
third
would
person
also
kind of deal.
see different other characters and different perspectives too.
That's
Yeah.
You
true.
probably wouldn't find Mr. Woodhouse as endearing,
Mm-hmm.
as at least I found him.
Yeah. I may not have liked the book as much if it was from
Yeah.
the outside. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the thing that really made the book for me is the characters.
Right.
Yes.
And through Emma. Yeah.
I mean, technically it was in third person because we do get some perspective from Mr. Knightley. But it's just more limited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. That's true.
But we don't have it to the degree of Northanger Abbey where it's dear reader,
I love that. I love when books break the fourth wall like that.
yeah.
Yes.
That's weird to me. I don't even know my neighbors. Urza.
I know my neighbors, but I live in an apartment complex, so.
I live in the country, so everyone's related around
Yeah.
me.
I live in a condominium complex. One neighbor I see maybe 5 times a year when we are both happen to be up on our back decks at the same time. The other one I literally have seen twice in the 6 years that I've lived here. So
That's funny.
and it's only when they've been backing out of their garage. So
I'm a transplanted New Yorker living in the South. So, growing up in New York, first of all, I grew up in the middle of the woods, in the middle of the country, where literally the first 3 houses on our road was my family. But, in New York, at least where I was growing up, you kind of mind your own business, and you don't, say hi to people unless they say hi to you. You don't, try to know everyone else's business, but down here, they force you into conversation. And so I'm
waiting as you drive,
yes, I'm I still have that New Yorker mentality where I know half of my neighbors here in this apartment complex because they've introduced themselves to me, but the other half I don't know because I didn't go and talk to them. I just occasionally see them. The person straight across the hall from me, I don't know their names, but I know they have a little bitty dog that is afraid of people because every time they hear me coming and unlocking the door, you can hear their little bark from inside. One time they were coming out to walk the dog and they were I'm sorry, my dog is afraid of people.
Aw.
She is this little Chihuahua type of dog, and she shakes every time someone that she doesn't know comes near her.
Sorry, I just saw Urza's comment that cracks me up.
Yes. It's so funny though. The village in Canada where our house is, we're related to like everybody up there somehow. But you leave your like there's a door and then the screen door, so you leave your main door open so people know they can drop in. But if they did that here, I'd be like, no, my door is shut all the time. But up there, it's different.
Yeah, my parents don't lock their door.
And I can't imagine that not locking your door, except for up there, but it's so tiny. And I grew up in Little Rock in Arkansas, and you always lock your door.
Yeah.
Like, so.
Although they do lock their gate because otherwise the deer will come in and eat the roses. So
They lock it against deer, but not people.
yeah.
Deer.
So,
Is there anything else that you guys wanted to touch on that we haven't gotten to yet?
we haven't really talked about Frank Churchill really that at all.
Frank.
No,
true.
we haven't actually. We've been avoiding him.
We've talked about everyone else associated with him.
Yep.
We've walked around Frank Churchill.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's been mentioned in passing.
I mean, he knew what he was doing. He's not quite John Willoughby, but he's definitely not a romantic hero at all.
No.
I forgot that we do actually go into Jane's head briefly and sort of his head
Yeah.
for like a small portion of the book so that we know what happened.
Uh, anyways, he sucks.
Yeah, I was gonna say no one has anything else to say.
He's like more of an anti-hero than anything.
Yeah.
And I think he's more one note than a lot of the other characters that we've been discussing. Like we've had a lot to say about a lot of other characters. Frank Churchill is just like
I mean,
He's
the
just
dude
Frank
went all the
Churchill.
way to London just to get a haircut.
what else do you need to know? Red flag number 1.
Yes.
I totally
Yes,
thought
crickets.
that was so he could get the piano. Was it that? Or maybe I
don't
mis-
know.
Was sent before.
I was thinking it was
That's
before
what
too.
Yeah.
Okay.
I could be wrong. But I feel like he was a character that was a means to an end for everybody. He was a means to an end for Jane Fairfax. He was a
Mhm.
means to an end as the confusion of Emma confusing Harriet's love for Frank Churchill instead of Mr. Knightley, and then Emma feeling like she, all that. So
And yet again, another example of Mr. Knightley's good judgment, because every single time he's like, why do you care about this person? Or don't talk to this person? Or like every single time, he's right. He's a great judge of character.
Yes. I
Frank
love that the
Churchill-
big mystery of the book was who sent the piano.
yeah.
Yeah. That was entertaining. You really feel the community in this book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's because it feels, it is, not to say that none of Jane Austen's other novels are very contained, but it just feels more intimate because of you see the a wider cast of the Highbury.
It feels like
Residents.
some of her other novels were more centered around particular characters or families, whereas this is, even though it's ironically titled Emma after our quote main character, it's more about what happens in Highbury
Yeah.
than what happens to Emma the character.
And there's not like someone mentioned, like Emma doesn't travel. So like every other book that I can think of that Jane Austen has written, like people are traveling. They're going to Bath, they're going to London, they're going here, they're going there. And like Emma doesn't travel. So I think that makes it feel that much more like we get to know the actual like town itself.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like the traveling that they did, I think we you guys mentioned before is to Box Hill.
Yeah. Which is, yeah.
Or Mr. Knightley's place.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh my goodness.
To try the strawberries.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had to walk all this way.
To be fair, strawberries are delicious.
Yeah, I mean, he
They
had an
are.
overabundance. What is he gonna do with them all?
Just
Yeah.
gonna rot in the sun.
Oh my goodness.
Do you guys remember when you first read this book? Like, I knew that in most Austen books there was going to be a marriage at the end.
Oh, yeah.
And I think I was totally misled the first time I read it. I was like, oh yeah,
Mhm.
she's definitely gonna marry this, guy who goes to London for a haircut,
Yeah.
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 I remember when I first read it, and I got to the end, and it was like, Mr. Nutley's like, I love you. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And
Same.
now I like read Emma just to get to the ending where they get matched up.
Yeah. I first read it, I think, early high school because I was that nerd that always read classics.
That's me too.
Same.
And it was like, oh my gosh, what?
And I had no idea that like there's anything going on with Frank Churchill and Jane Fairfax. Like that was like
Yeah.
blew my mind the first time I
Yeah.
read this. I was like, what?
Oh, yes. Naive reader.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it was only the second Austen I ever read. I read Pride and Prejudice and then I read Emma in high school. So I was not yet totally aware of the formula.
Or life in general.
Yeah, that too, definitely. For sure.
Because that was kind of my experience with Mansfield Park. I think the first two times I've read it, I was like, eh. But now that I'm older, I definitely appreciate it a lot.
I also didn't find it as funny the first couple of times I read it
Yeah.
as I did this. Like this time, because I've read most of Jane Austen's novels now, I look for that wit that's there, and I understand it because I'm older and I've read more of her time. But when I first read it in high school, I was like,
How's this funny?
it was like this big romance to me. I didn't think
Yeah.
it was funny at all. I thought it was like a huge romance novel with like maybe a little bit of humor sprinkled through here and there, but like this time reading it, like I couldn't stop laughing. And for the first half of the book, I did an immersion read, so I listened to an audiobook along with it, and I forget who the narrator was, but she just like got every one of the characters just like perfectly with the way that she read them. It was like the perfect amount of sarcasm where it needed to be, and like, oh, poor Miss Taylor.
I think that Miss Bates was way funnier on audiobook too, because I listened to the audio mostly for it this time around.
Yeah.
And my gosh, I forget who was narrating mine too, but like she talked so fast when there was Miss Bates and like barely took a breath, and I'm like, this is perfect. This is so much more fun than reading like pages of Miss Bates.
I didn't
talking.
enjoy it as much when my audiobook loan ran out by the library and I couldn't renew it.
Ugh.
It's like one day it just like ran out like without warning. I'm like, but I still have like half the book left.
How dare they?
So other than Stephanie, have any of you guys seen the Autumn de Wilde Emma adaptation?
I've never seen any Emma adaptation at
It's
all.
really good.
I've never seen Clueless. I've never seen the Gwyneth Paltrow one. I haven't seen any adaptations.
Well, don't watch the Gwyneth Paltrow one.
I don't know if you would agree with me, Christy, but the lady that plays Miss Bates in the Autumn de Wilde adaptation is hysterical. And also, I feel so bad for her at the same time. Like, it's perfectly cast and perfectly acted.
I need to watch that one.
I just ordered it from the library so I can watch it again because I haven't watched it for several years. So,
Yeah, I was just thinking.
But I've only seen the one I really like because I haven't seen the new one is the Romola Garai one, and I love. I think it's Michael Gambon as Mr. Woodhouse. He does such a good job.
Don't you mean? Oh
What's
God. I'm gonna do a really bad impersonation of Alan doing a really bad impersonation. Did you put your goblet in the fire? Or
Yeah,
get a lot of fire.
Yeah, whatever his name is.
Michael
That's
Gambon,
funny.
Professor Dumbledore.
Yeah, that's what I said, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I hear the name and I'm just like, so Professor
I
Dumbledore
gotcha.
2.0. So
2.0.
Gotcha.
Well,
Yeah.
should we do like a watch party in like chat in the Discord while we watch, maybe?
Oh, that would be fun.
Cool. I think we
I
should
gotta
do that.
see if I can get. Hopefully, my library has a copy. That would be awesome. If
Or is it streaming anywhere?
I don't know.
I don't think so. I just have it on digital.
Okay. I'll look into it. But yeah, that'd be really fun.
That would be fun.
Yes.
So I
And I
think
will- My wine.
we're probably not reading anything in September this month, but maybe October, or is it November? I can't remember.
I think we said November. I have a lot of Victober reads.
Okay.
So unless
Yeah,
we're
me
reading
too.
something for Victober together, then
Is our next book Demons?
Yeah, I was gonna say at the very least we have Demons in December.
yes,
Hey, there you go, Demons in December.
it's alliterated and everything.
And I know, I mean, if anyone wants to join Stephanie and me, we're reading North and South in October for Victober.
Ooh. I love North and South.
Sorry, Stephanie. There you go. I'm just opening it up to everybody.
So it's a reread for me, and I want more people to love it.
It's the only Gaskell I've ever read, actually, is North and South. I haven't read anything else by her. I need to read Wives and Daughters eventually.
Ooh, apparently Amazon Prime. Thank you, Matt.
Oh,
Thank you.
So we could even, because I have Prime, like screen share it or whatever.
That would be so cool.
Yeah, we could totally do that. And yes, Matt, I had never heard of Gaskell until I was older, so I only saw the miniseries North and South, and I would always get it confused too.
Wait, are they not the same thing?
No. The miniseries North and South by John Jakes is about the Civil War.
oh.
Well,
Well, there is a North and South miniseries based on the book as well.
Yeah,
so.
but
That's why I was
I
like,
had
is it
never
different?
heard of it until I was older. But I grew up with the Civil War North and South
Oh, okay.
with is it Patrick Swayze?
I don't know.
Somebody, there's a big actor in it, but
Interest has been piqued.
the miniseries of the Gaskell North and South with Richard Armitage is top tier. And Slim.
I'm like looking up all the adaptions of North and South. I just heard too from Petra Yu, who is now one of the Victober co-hosts. She was saying that the North and South adaptation is really good, but I need to double check which one it was.
I've heard that from people too. That
It's
it's like
really-
one of their favorite adaptations ever is the North and South one.
Yeah. And Richard Armitage is just so good for that role. Yes. Okay. So yeah, we can stream it in Discord.
That'd be fun.
Let's discuss the day, and we'll let people know in the Discord.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
So now that I can create stuff.
All right, if you can hear me, my internet is freaking out, so I might have
We
to
can
drop.
hear you now.
I think we're wrapping up anyways. Is
Yeah.
there anything
You're
else
good.
you guys wanted to?
Okay,
Scott?
hopefully that works.
Oh, Urza had a
Okay.
question.
I just had to turn off my camera because hopefully that
I love
helps
your
with the
picture.
bandwidth or whatever.
North and South, it's the North and South of England. So we have a girl who moves from the idyllic South, I think, to
I
the
think so too.
manufacturer industrial North, and kind of exploring all that. And we meet Mr. Thornton, who's like I don't want to say overseer, but
Something like that. I
Yeah,
was thinking manager, and I'm like, that's not
yeah,
right.
manager, boss, owner of the mill or this stuff, and they just get involved, and it's just really, really good. And there's a romance, and it discusses class, and it's fantastic. It was my first Gaskell, and I loved it.
Oh, that's a good one.
So,
The debates between the love interests are like so interesting.
yes, I really love their dynamic. It's really, really good.
Yeah.
Yes.
It doesn't have the humor of Pride and Prejudice, though. I went into it expecting something that it wasn't, and that made my enjoyment level really low for it because I was expecting it to be much more similar to Pride and Prejudice. So I'm like, I want to like reread it at some point because I think I'll like it better knowing what it's supposed to be and not because someone's like, it's Pride and Prejudice but better, and I'm like, it's not the same book as Pride and Prejudice.
No, it's got similarities.
It
But
does. The relationship has a lot of similarities to Pride and Prejudice. But like it has a lot more, I feel like, discussion on industrialization and immigration and all that kind of stuff than I think it's more serious of a book than Pride and Prejudice is.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like more about a moral argument than Pride and Prejudice is.
Yeah.
Even though there is a moral in Pride and Prejudice, it's not as debated.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I bet.
Why has no one done that? Has someone done that?
I bet there's a cozy mystery.
It would be perfect. She'd be like Miss Marple, but younger.
The murder of Mr. Wickham is a mystery, and it features all of Austen's characters in it. So maybe
I've heard of that, but I've heard mixed things on it, so I haven't picked it up.
I didn't finish it because of the way it portrayed Fanny and Edmund, but
Oh.
that's a similar spot for me.
But yeah, join us for North and South because that will be fun.
Yes.
And have we put a place for that anywhere, or did we just discuss it in our book tag group and then
What, North and South?
North and South?
That was just supposed to be between a buddy read with me and you, and I just
Okay.
that's why I was like, I'm sorry, Stephanie, I'm opening it up to everybody. So
Okay. Well, if it's okay, I can create a channel on literary discourse for anyone that's interested.
Let's do it. Maybe Amanda will join us.
Yes. And then we'll post about a watch party for Emma.
Yay.
And then Demons in December.
Yes.
All the good stuff.
and
Yes.
maybe we'll figure something out in November if we all have time.
Yeah.
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 This was so fun. Thank you for hosting, Kate.
Yes.
Thank you guys for joining me. And thank you, everyone out there, Matt and Emily and Urza, for joining us today. I think everyone here is subscribed to everyone else, but if you're not, y'all need to go and subscribe to everyone else.
And smash that like button.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope you guys have an awesome weekend. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.